And for more, we're joined by Christopher Lamb, President at the Australia-Myanmar Institute and former Australian ambassador to Myanmar. Thank you for your time this morning. Firstly, how should we see China's role in this temporary ceasefire? Have they reacted to a request to intercede, or have they proactively sought to intervene?
Well, I don't think any of us know for certain why the Chinese have chosen this time to intervene. But my examination of all this tells me that the Chinese have become heartily sick of crime at the border. All kinds of people running scams of different sorts, including lottery scams at the border and on the Myanmar side of the border. Very little reaction from the Myanmar military to Chinese requests that this crime stop or be stopped. And so the Chinese felt that they needed to try to work out how to bring an end to this. That may have contributed to an improvement in terms of arms supply to the various insurgent armies that there are. And those armies, which have not had a long history of good cooperation, have been able to come together to form what they call the Three Brotherhood Alliance. That has led to the military regime losing outposts or even bases, as they sometimes get described, across that border area that you've mentioned, the northern border of the Shan state with China. The military have lost control of at least 4 border crossings into China, and therefore of the ability to maintain trade across that border. There's also been losses for the military in the Chin state and in the Sagaing division. And looking at your map, directly to the west of Shan is the Mandalay and Magwai regions, and then comes the Kachin state and the Chin state. Right across that band, the military have lost ground or lost bases. The Chinese have felt, I believe, that the time was right for them to say to the Burmese military, it's time to start looking at peace. And so the Chinese were able to persuade the various parties to come together for a discussion about a ceasefire. Now, from what I understand, and most of this comes from media reporting because it's so difficult to get anybody to report directly from the site of these talks, the talks themselves were short, maybe only as long as 40 minutes. They produced at least a confluence of interest from both sides in having talks, but I'm not sure at all that they've produced a ceasefire that will last, but we will see.
And what do you make then, or what are the main things that we should keep in mind and know about Myanmar's military rule at present? How much control do they currently have on the country?
Of course, if you can take your numbers from different directions. If you take your numbers in terms of population, the military still have essential control of the major cities and the largest share of the population. But if you look at territory and start there in that northern band of the country that I mentioned before, you will see that there are large swathes of the country going to the Chinese and Thai borders on one side of the country, across to the Bangladesh and even Indian borders on the other side, where the military has very little control, and certainly no control on what you would call a 24-hour day. So it's difficult to work that out. But the people that we see from the National Unity Government, the shadow government, talk about how the extent of their control has grown significantly. And the measure of that is their ability to move medical, nutrition, and other supplies into the communities in that band. And that continues to grow. So that has led a lot of reporters to start to think about how the military is actually in a decline, which is probably irreversible in the country. They've never had the support of the population as a whole. And if they continue to have that decline and the loss of people who have defected, the loss of bases or police stations or other units, then it will be harder and harder for them to maintain the semblance of control that they have now beyond the capital. And even around the capital, there are incidents from time to time, and there's evidence of a withdrawal of troops from the more far-flung regions to defend the capital, Naypyidaw.
So given then the losses that the military has suffered due to the ethnic armed organizations, is Myanmar heading towards more fragmentation and perhaps even more chaos?
Well, that's the warning that you get from people in the military, that the country faces fragmentation. And therefore, what the country needs is for the military strength to be able to be shown so that the country holds together. And that brings back stories which have been running ever since the country's independence about fragmentation at the hands of the ethnic groups. I think that what the 1027 alliance, the Three Brotherhood alliance, shows is that it's possible for these groups to work together in ways that haven't been possible in times of previous insurgencies or uprisings. And so we need to be able to see how that's going to unfold. And we talk, when we have the opportunity to people from the NUG, the National Unity Government, about their ability to foresee a future in which there will be a government in Naypyidaw not controlled by the Tatmadaw as it's presently constructed. They're a little hazy about how that might stand, but that's more and more a subject of discussion, and there's more and more evidence that that's the direction they're taking.
Oh, thank you very much for your time and for your insight this morning. Christopher Lamb, they're president of the Australia-Myanmar Institute and also former Australian ambassador to Myanmar.